Hi, so welcome to part 2 of our information processing series. What we're going to be talking about in this one is the development of our memory system and about how our brain actually processes different things. So if you remember from prior in this class, our brain is made up of a whole host of things, but some things that are really important to memory are things like our hippocampus. So our hippocampus is actually something that helps us to remember episodic memories, so things like our ability to remember things like events. If I asked you what you did yesterday, recalling that information all has to do with our hippocampus and encoding that information. Some of the things that are kind of cool that if you've ever watched Inside Out, they kind of have those memories on little balls, that kind of perfectly preserve it. Well, that's not actually true. Our memories are actually stored all throughout our brains. So our ability to process memories and actually store memories are both due to growth in things like our hippocampus, but also in how well we're able to process that information across our brain and get it back together. Let's talk a little bit about some of those limits to memory really early on. And in our brain development, actually, the memory centers of our brain are still forming during those first years of life. In one study where they actually looked at newborn infants all the way up to the first 3 years of life, what they were trying to do is look at, well, how does our brain develop over that time? And like we remember from before, we know that our brain continues to develop. We start to still see things like synaptogenesis and myelination, for example. But something that's really interesting is that the whole brain itself grows by about 64%. So we start to see this kind of big growth in our brain. However, some of our memory centers, so the hippocampus being one of them, grows only by about 47%. So it's a little bit less than how big that whole brain grows. So the hippocampus still may need to grow and develop over time. Our cerebellum, I'm actually going to go back real quick. Cerebellum, which is our little brain in the very, very back of our head, that actually deals with a whole lot of motor movements, so coordinating motor movements together. And that grows by a whole 105%. That's the fastest growing area of the brain in the first 3 months of life. And it kind of makes sense, right? Infants are starting to take those reflexes that they have, and they start to be able to coordinate those reflexes. So it kind of makes sense that the cerebellum continues to grow during that time.